Hi, my name is Fred Klink. I'm the Director of Marketing and the Chairman of the Executive Committee for the Red Oak Victory. I want to welcome the viewers to Longest Night at Museums and welcome you to Richmond, California, to the Kaiser Shipyards all around us, and of course to the Red Oak Victory, which is berthed right behind us. The Kaiser Shipyards were started actually before World War II in 1940, and Kaiser began building ships for the British Maritime Association. And of course, as the United States became involved in the war, then Kaiser began to build ships for the United States as well. In total, there were 747 ships built in these shipyards during World War II, and the Red Oak Victory behind me here is the last one of those ships that's still intact and floating. The Kaiser Shipyards consisted of 4 shipyards, numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're in shipyard number 3, and we're going to talk a little bit more later in this video about the history of the shipyards. The Red Oak Victory was built in 1944. She was launched in November of 1944, and it took just 88 days to build this ship. To put that in perspective, before World War II, a cargo ship of this size would have required a year of construction work. The ship was launched in November of 1944, and she was commissioned as a U.S. Navy vessel. In other words, she became USS Red Oak Victory in December of 44. Her hull number was AK-235, an AK being a general purpose cargo carrier, but Red Oak Victory was one of 10 Victory ships which were converted to be used as fleet ammunition carriers for the U.S. Navy. She left here in December of 1944 for Pearl Harbor, and then on beyond Pearl Harbor to the Pacific Theater, where she served in the Ulithi Atoll and also in the final liberation of the Philippine Islands. After World War II, the ship remained in the Pacific Theater, serving around the Philippines area until May of 1946, when she returned to the United States. Stricken from the Navy books, she was returned to MARAD, the Maritime Administration, and became a merchant vessel. From 1946 to 1968, she served with various merchant marine companies as a merchant vessel in many different duties, many different parts of the world. These included serving the military supply line to the Korean conflict and 19 voyages from here in the San Francisco Bay Area to Vietnam during the Vietnam War, also carrying military supplies. And in fact, during Vietnam, she returned to her roots, so to speak, and became an ordnance carrier. She carried bombs for the Vietnam conflict. We're going to talk today about all of that aspect of the ship and her history and her configuration, and hopefully by the end of this video you'll have a better appreciation for the Red Oak Victory and why we think she's an important vessel to keep as a historic vessel, as a museum ship. In 1998, it was recognized that Red Oak Victory was the last of 747 ships built here in the Kaiser Shipyards, and Congress conveyed the ship to the Richmond Museum Association to serve as a museum ship, which is what she's serving as today. We also have a goal of getting this ship underway so we can take passengers out on the bay, especially on a beautiful day like today. And our all-volunteer crew is dedicated to making that happen. And we're going to talk a little bit about the engine room and the engines that we lit off in 2018 to prove that the ship's power plant, at least, is in good enough shape to be used as a cargo vessel. The Red Oak Victory relies entirely on donations from people like you who are enthusiasts for history, enthusiasts for historic ships. If you would like to make a donation to the ship, follow the URL that's posted at the bottom of your screen to go to our donation page. Also, we'd like you to follow our social media on Facebook. URL is given as well, and Instagram, and sign up for or subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we've recently started a whole series of videos which are called Now Hear This, that have some interesting tidbits about being a sailor during the Second World War. Hello again. We're down in hold number 4 on the Red Oak Victory, and I'd like to introduce Alan Burns. Alan is our chief docent, and he's going to talk a little bit about the general configuration of the Red Oak Victory. Alan?
Hi everybody. This is a diagram of the ship, the original configuration of the ship. In a nutshell, the ship is about 455 feet long, and it basically is a gigantic floating warehouse. We have hold number 1 in this area, hold number 2 is here, hold number 3 here, hold number 4 here, and hold number 5. Overall, the ship has about 455,000 cubic feet of storage space, which is an awful lot. And to equate that to something meaningful, maybe 60 to 70 boxcars worth of stuff could be loaded on here. Between each of the 4 holds, or the 5 holds I should say, we have a watertight bulkhead separating each one of these holds. So if the hull should be breached in any one area, it wouldn't flood to the next compartment. There's a double hull on the bottom of the ship, about 4 feet high, which is used for feed water and fuel. 3 masts, foremast, mainmast, mizzenmast, 14 booms, and 14 electric winches, and those are used for loading and unloading cargo. The deck house is here, 3 decks. The engine room is in the middle on this ship, and the propeller shaft covers almost half of the ship. It's probably 160, 170 feet long. So to recap about the holds, there are 5 holds on the ship. Holds 1, 2, and 3 go all the way from the main deck down to the keel and are divided into 3 sections. Holds 4 and 5 only go down to the top of the shaft alley. We're right here at the present time in hold number 4.
We are standing at the present time in hold number 3. Hold number 3 is divided into 3 sections, and we're in the mid-level section. In order to show you what we have to do in order to load or unload cargo, the first thing is to remove all the hatch covers and the braces. If you look up above, you'll see the floor of the upper section, upper 3, which has to be removed. All of the hatch covers are sitting on top of these strong backs. The strong backs then have to be removed when the hatch covers are taken off in order to open up the mid-level section of hold 3. Looking down here, you can see the same setup again of hatch covers and beams. Here is a typical hatch cover. It's roughly 4.5 feet by 2.5 feet. Weighs about 60 to 70 pounds. And in order to lift this up and move it, it requires 2 people. Each person is going to have a long hook, and they'll hook this wire on each end, lift it up, and take it off to the side. Once these hatch covers are removed on this floor level, we then have to remove the strong backs again, and that'll open up the lower portion of hold number 3. Hello again, everybody. We are currently on the forward part of the ship right now, just aft of hold number 2. And on my left, we've got a cargo winch, and on my right, we've got another cargo winch. There are 14 cargo winches on the ship and 14 booms. Each hatch, or each hold, I should say, is serviced by 2 cargo winches and 2 booms. There are 2 controllers right here below. This controller operates the port cargo winch. This one operates the starboard cargo winch. And they work together. The cable from the port cargo winch goes up to the port boom, and the cable from the starboard cargo winch goes up to the starboard boom. And as you can see, they come together right there in the middle, and that's where the hook is located. In order to raise cargo from the bottom of the hold, both of these cargo winches would be would be winding up, raising the cable and raising the hook, which in turn is going to raise the load up above the main deck. In order to transfer that load over to the pier, this winch will be operating paying out cable, while the starboard winch is going to be reeling in cable, and that results in the hook being transferred from this position over to the pier.
Well, you've learned some of the unique features of the Red Oak Victory, and in fact unique features of any cargo ship. You saw how we load cargo off and on, and you saw the interior of the holds. Now, how do we steer the ship? How do we get her from point A to point B? Well, like any other ship, there's a bridge, and the bridge is where all of the activities related to steering the ship and keeping her on course are going to take place. So I'm standing at the helm. This is the principal helm from which the ship is steered, and we have a magnetic compass and a gyro compass repeater up here, which are the primary tools that the helmsman is going to use to keep the ship on course. If you were to look behind where the camera is right now, there are only a few portholes. There isn't a wide view of the front portion of the ship, and the reason for that is when we're at sea, there's nothing to look at. You don't steer by looking out the windshield like you do with your car. You steer by looking at the compass and keeping on the course that the navigator has designated for the ship. If you want to know more about compasses, magnetic compasses and gyro compasses, go to our YouTube channel and watch the video called From Point A to Point B. It's one of our series of videos entitled Now Hear This. Well, when we were over at the helm, we were talking about keeping the ship on course, and that's certainly a very important aspect of the activity that goes on up here on the bridge. But the other thing we have to be able to do is control the engines. Are they going forward? Are they going in reverse? And what's the speed that they're going? Now, you've probably all seen these engine order telegraphs in the movies, and it might surprise you to learn that the engine order telegraph doesn't actually do anything to the engines. When I issue an order with the engine order telegraph, so for example, we can look at the face of the telegraph, and it has a head, which means going that way, and slow, half speed, or full speed. And then we have the same orders for going astern, going that way, slow, half speed, and full. And right now we're on stop, and there's also standby and finished with engine as the other orders. Let's say I'm the officer of the deck and I want to change from going full speed ahead to half speed ahead. So I'll issue the order, or I'll have the guy who's manning this thing issue the order, and the bell will ring and he'll stop the handles on half speed ahead. Well, as I just said a minute ago, that doesn't do anything to the engines, and if nothing else were to happen on the ship, nothing would change. What it does do is rings a bell and points to the engine order telegraph, which is down in the engine room near the throttles. And the engineer who's operating the throttles will look at that engine order telegraph, and the first thing he does is acknowledges the order, which is this small arrow. So when he acknowledges the order, the small arrow will point to half speed ahead, and then he goes over immediately and changes the throttles to half speed ahead. So in fact, all this is doing is sending a message, and that's why it's called the engine order telegraph. It's not actually the throttle.
Another steering position on the Red Oak Victory is located on the roof of the aft deckhouse, so we're almost at the very tail end of the ship when we're in this position. This is an emergency steering position if battle damage or other damage occurred to both of the steering positions that are forward, that is the one on the bridge and the one on the flying bridge, then this would be our fallback position. And it's equipped just like the other steering positions are, of course, with the wheel. There's a gyro compass repeater, which would be our primary means of steering the ship. And in the event that we'd lost power and the gyro compass was no longer operational, there's also a magnetic compass binnacle, which includes all of the
magnets and iron bars and the quadrangular spheres, which are used to adjust the magnetic compass when it's used on a steel ship. And of course, in addition to that, there is a means of communicating with the bridge where the officer of the deck, who would probably still be on the bridge, could give orders to this helmsman. Making history today, folks. I'm here on the bridge of the Red Oak Victory, one of only 3 surviving U.S. World War II victory ships in the United States. We're at the California Maritime Academy, and we've been here for about a month. Why do I say that we're making history? Because during the month that we've been here at Cal Maritime, we have lit off the engines of this victory ship for the first time in 50 years. And this is the first World War II major U.S. vessel to have the engines lit off in at least 30 years. The Red Oak Victory served during World War II in the latter years of the war, 1944 and 1945, and then was turned over to the Maritime Commission after being decommissioned as a Navy vessel and served for an additional 20 years throughout the world as a merchant marine vessel.
Hey, how you doing? Good. My name's Greg. I'm the chief engineer on the Red Oak Victory. After 50 years, we finally got the plant running. 5 to 15 team members, and they have all different kinds of experience, mechanical, electrical, marine engineers, all doing a really good job. There's a lot of mechanical things that had to be done, electrical. There's a lot of pumps that needed to be overhauled. There was a lot of welding that needed to be done, a lot of boiler work. I spent 25 days myself inside the furnaces rebricking. Ship is in excellent shape.
Hello again, everybody. Here we are in historic shipyard number 3, which was part of the Kaiser shipyards, of which there were 4. On my left, aside from the beautiful view of San Francisco, are the 5 dry docks. You'll notice that the gates are missing at the present time, but back in 1944, there were rubber gates at the end of each of these dry docks, which allowed them to take the water out of the dry dock. The ship could be built, and as soon as the ship was finished, we flood the dry docks, open the gates, and we could launch the ship from this location. These dry docks are still in use today by other companies, or at least from the Port of Oakland. Over here on my right, though, I want to point out a couple things. One, the red whirly crane is here. This whirly crane is one of about 40 cranes which operated in the 4 shipyards. Here in shipyard number 3, there were at least 10 of these cranes operating. They operated on rails on both sides of the shipyard, and they were used to load various components of the ship as they were constructed in the sub-assembly plants. The cranes could operate independently, or they could be operating in pairs for very large sections, such as a section of the double hull. The double hull section could be brought down to the dry dock on a truck. These cranes would pull over the truck, lift up the section, and bring it down over the dry dock and load it in place. It could be welded. The last thing to mention, extremely important, is the osprey up there in the middle of the cable between the cab and the end of the boom. We were very fortunate to be able to have these ospreys nest here every year. They have done it for several years that I've been here, and spring is a great time to see these come in and watch the new chicks be born. We are currently standing on the starboard side of the Red Oak Victory in shipyard number 3, and we're in berth number 5, one of 5 berths in this dry dock. On my right are some original buildings that were actually constructed in 1941 as part of this shipyard, and as you can see, they are still here. The one on my right, the 1-story gray building, contains the paint shop, the rigging loft, and the metal shop. Next to it is a huge concrete structure. This was the general stores warehouse. Once the ships were actually constructed, they'd tie up along the wharf on the other side, and they could be outfitted with all the materials you need to operate a ship. To the left of that is a 2-story gray sheet metal shop. This is the machine shop. With the Red Oak Victory, and for that matter, all cargo ships in the Victory class and the Liberty class were serving in the Second World War, they were armed to defend themselves primarily against aerial attacks.
The 20 millimeter cannon or 20 millimeter machine gun was the primary anti-aircraft weapon on the ship. It was a fully automatic weapon, and there were 8 of these mounted on the aft deck house, which is where we are now, 4 more on the deck house, the main deck house, and 2 more on the forecastle area. These 20 millimeter cannons were fed with a snail drum magazine, and that would mount directly on top of the cannon and carried 40 rounds, so they could be expended pretty quickly, and having a gunner's assistant who was replacing magazines as quickly as they were being fired was extremely important. The other 2 guns on the ship were dual-purpose naval artillery pieces, and I'll show you the first one back here. The dual-purpose nature of these deck guns that I mentioned was anti-aircraft and anti-surface ship, although it's unlikely that a cargo vessel such as the Red Oak Victory would be engaged with another surface ship. If they were, I think they had gotten in trouble they shouldn't have been in. But as an anti-aircraft gun, these were pretty effective. In fact, this was the most widely used gun in the United States Navy in World War II. This is a 5-inch 38 caliber gun. The 38 caliber, most people nowadays, of course, think of caliber as being the diameter of the bullet, but what it means in this case is the diameter of the projectile, which is 5 inches, times 38 is the length of the barrel. Well, we've gone from being about as far aft on the Red Oak Victory as we could when we were looking at the 5-inch gun, and now we're about as far forward as you can get. This is the 3-inch 50 caliber gun. So this again is a dual-purpose Navy deck gun, and the dual purpose again being either anti-aircraft or anti-surface ship. This gun is operational in the sense that we're able to fire blank rounds from the gun, and we've done that as a demonstration on a couple of occasions.
Watch your hand.
Go ahead.
Fire in the hole!
Here we are in the Red Oak Victory's galley, and one of the more unique things that you'll see in this galley and that of all Victory ships is this grill or stove. This is a diesel-powered, or I should say diesel-heated stove. The heat source is a diesel heater, and there's both the grill top and the ovens underneath, and all heated with that diesel heater. We do use this. We use it to cook the pancakes for our pancake breakfasts, and you can't smell diesel fumes. There's no sensation that diesel is actually being burned at all when we work in the galley. Now we realize, or we understand from some past Longest Night of Museums broadcasts, that there was some interest in shipboard toasters. And so here's ours. This one is original to the Red Oak Victory. It's a 4-slice toaster. It weighs about 25 pounds, it's a pretty hefty piece of metal, and it's powered by 220 volt DC, that is direct current power. I want to thank you for listening to our broadcast, for taking an interest in the Red Oak Victory. If you would like, please join our mailing list, and as I mentioned earlier in this broadcast, join or come and like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we hope to have you come and visit the ship sometime. We're open every Sunday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the summertime, close at 3 p.m. in the wintertime, and there are both self-guided tours and docent-led tours. And as I said, we hope to see you on board the ship, and we hope that in playing World of Warships, you will use the Red Oak Victory in your convoys. Thank you.